the Denver Nuggets have been trying to get rid of Zeke Nnaji's contract for forever. And he's a guy that we really don't know what he is because he's never really played because he's been buried behind the depth chart. But they extended him, and his contract is one that's like somewhat tradable. I think like that when you look at it, it's a deal with Zeke. I've said it. You got to trade Zeke Nnaji for Vasi Micic. If you can trade Zeke Nnaji for Vasi Micic, then Nick Richard more than likely becomes available for the Hornets, as they'll be, even if Mark Williams doesn't return, because then they'll have themselves a guy that they can go ahead and move. But yeah, I think that when you look around the league, the easiest deal for them to do is clearly going after a guy like Vasi Micic, and I think it just makes the most sense. There's a connection already there with Nikola Jokic and Vasi Micic. Now, this is a guy, Nikola Jokic is on pace right now to win his 4th MVP in 5 years, averaging a triple-double. Jamal Murray's early season shooting struggles with the absence of Aaron Gordon with a right calf strain is leading to Denver having an underwhelming start compared to their championship contending standards. While Christian Brown has been a revelation, as he's done a great job replacing KCP, who went to Orlando. However, Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther have seen their minutes and production rise this season, which was an emphasis for Denver. Now, the core four of Jokic, Murray, and Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. are all signed through 2027. And the Nuggets will look to tinker around the edges, and that one player that they're dangling through trade talks for the past 2 seasons and is on the start of a 4-year, $32 million extension is the 23-year-old Zeke Nnaji, who is like a switch big. He can play the 4, the 5. He's, at this point, you probably wanted to be a 5. Coming out of college, he was supposed to be like a decently rebounding guy. It's actually just a rather precarious situation with Zeke, because he's just been buried. But even then, like, DeAndre Jordan's bad knees get more minutes than Zeke does. As I said, it just makes sense because we talked about the Nick Richards trade earlier, that if you're gonna go, if Nick Richards does get traded, it's either Mark Williams is back or they get themselves a young big, and this young big could be Zeke Nnaji, who's actually a really good athlete for a 6'11", 240-pound guy who has like a 7'1" wingspan, runs the floor well, and I've always thought he had skill. I think he's a guy who finishes around the basket decent, and the 3-point shot, we don't know if it's there or not, but he was a decent mid-range shooter in college. He put a high effort on the glass, especially on the offensive side, and he was able to dribble a little bit, and he could be a rim protector. So I think there are enticing features when you look at a guy like Zeke Nnaji, my apology. And if you could trade him, like a 3-team trade that we could realistically talk about is where you send Vasi to the Nuggets, Zeke to the Hornets, and I'm trying to think of what team would be the one that you would try to get themselves who needs a backup big or is trying to get a cheaper big. I mean, the Pelicans maybe send you somebody or something along those lines.